on this episode of the Data Nerd Podcast.
So a lot of times we think, I'm an imposter. I don't know how to do that. I've never done that before. No, you're in process. You're figuring it out as you go. So is everybody else. Like,
That's a great way to see it. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're in process.
I'm your host, Nisar Ahmed. Join me as we explore the inner data nerd inside all of us. Dive into the world of data alongside special guests who not only share their wealth of experience and knowledge, but also unveil what truly makes them data nerds. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a comment wherever you listen. And for all episodes, plus exclusive merch like the Data Nerd hat, head over to the datanerdpodcast.com. I had the pleasure of talking to Rachel Druckenmiller, a keynote speaker, leadership trainer, and founder of Unmuted. I saw your post yesterday on the voice method, and there was a video there where you talked about it. And I think the voice method is something that you talk about, but this was the first time you're putting it on the platform like LinkedIn, right?
It was,
and I listened to that, and it really resonated with me. And there was a couple of things that resonated with me. Number one, and we'll get into what the voice method is, and I'll ask you about it, right? But I grew up as an introvert. I still am an introvert. Nothing's changed. You don't change who you are. But I was very shy, and I never spoke up to the extent that, like, I would literally, and you're the founder of Unmuted, which is a good title, because for me, I was a mute. Literally, I was a mute in high school. Did not talk.
Really?
Teacher would call on me, and I would be like, ignore her as if nobody was talking to me, and then she would just move on to somebody else. I would talk to my friends in small groups, one-on-one, but in public settings, I just was not that person. And now here I am. I have a podcast. I'm teaching. I'm giving lectures, and people in my high school are like, "Who are you? Like, what happened?" But this is something that I changed about myself. I'm not saying that I was like there was anything wrong with the way I was, but I wanted to better myself and improve, and it helped me in my personal development, in my career, right? So I'm talking about this Unmuted, right? You're a keynote speaker, you're a leadership trainer, and then you have a founder of Unmuted, and I think it's about helping other people speak up and be confident in themselves. So you want to talk about that and what you do?
Yeah. So I define Unmuted as being courageously expressed and boldly alive.
Okay.
So it's not just for me, it's not just about the speaking. It's about speaking up. That's part of it, but it's about trusting ourselves. It's about believing that we have something to offer and showing up and stepping up to offer that contribution to the world. There's so much that goes into being unmuted that is really about a way of showing up in the world and a way of coming alive. So that's really what I'm here to help people do. I'm here to help people come alive. And the expression of that is by living an unmuted life.
But that's part of it. I found that through my own personal journey, what enabled me to be comfortable speaking up is getting confidence in myself first. Because I think what I lacked before was that confidence, and I always feared what other people think. Once I got that out of my head, I was like, you know what? I'm here. I'm talking because people want to hear me. There's nothing to worry about.
What changed? So can I ask what changed that for you? Because there's often like a catalyst. So part of the voice method, we'll get to it, is the catalyst. So was there something that caused that shift in you?
It did. Okay. So in my career, so I'm a data professional. Okay. And we use different tools and softwares. There's one tool called Tableau. It's a business intelligence tool that helps you visualize data. Okay. I grew up like loving art. I never pursued that in any professional capacity, right? It was just a hobby. I got into data, which is good. Now, what Tableau did is this business intelligence tool was allowed me to integrate art and data together to create a solution that allowed me to tell a story through a visual, in a visual way, which
Hmm.
then put me in front of an audience to then communicate those insights. And it gave me confidence because I knew that what I had was something that people wanted to see and listen and hear about. And then it kind of forced me onto that stage. And then once I started with it and using it, I was like, you know what? This is not so bad. And that was the catalyst. That is what allowed me to change. And then I started getting offers for teaching classes and doing a lot of other engagements, and I actually like it.
Yeah. It's like connecting. So you connected to something that had always made you feel alive, which was art and no, and
Yes.
data and information,
The
right? And so it's
combination of the two. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah, so cool. Thanks for
Is
sharing.
that usually how it works with people? They connect to something that allows them to,
Yeah.
to give them that confidence?
Well, it's interesting. I was speaking at an event. It was an HR conference
Mm.
and last fall, and there was a guy who's in his early 60s who
Yeah.
was in the room. He's an HR generalist, and he contacted me a couple days after the keynote, and he says, "You inspired me to stop scrolling on iPad games at night and start writing the children's book that I've always wanted to write." Now, this guy then proceeded. I said, "Well, I need to know more. You're an HR generalist who's an aspiring children's book author. Tell me more about this
Mm.
story."
Mm.
And so I come to find out he's loved art and drawing since he was 4 years old. And he said when he was in high school, he was at a barber shop, and the barber had mentioned that he always liked art and liked drawing. And he said, "Well, why did you stop?" This man I was talking to, "Why did you stop?" And he just kind of shrugged his shoulders. And he said, as I'm talking to this man, he said, "I vowed to never stop." And then he sent me these pictures of illustrations that he has done. And I mean, these are incredible. This person is very, very talented.
Mm.
And this was something that was connected to a part of him from the time he was young. And I think same with me with music. So there's always, I think, going back at to our childhoods and thinking about what were the things that lit me up then? What were the things that made
Mm.
me come alive then? What were the things that piqued my curiosity then? What did I naturally want to do more of? What did I naturally want to spend time with? Um, my dad calls it interest driven work. Like what captured your interest when you were a child?
That's interesting. So somebody's listening here and they're like, okay, I get it. I need that catalyst, right?
Yeah.
And now they're thinking back to their childhood. But what if they think back to their childhood and like, okay, so obviously my audience here is mostly data professionals. We data professionals are mostly technical and we work with numbers, right?
Mhm.
That's what we're good at.
Yeah.
And they think back to their childhood. They're like, okay, what if I liked, and I'll give you an example, sports. How can I tie that into making me better in my career? If that was my passion growing up, how does that help me?
Well, here's the interesting thing. I don't believe that the things that lit us up as children necessarily have to become our careers as much as they become something that we just choose to honor in some way. So I'll give you an
Hmm.
example. I sing. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
I pursued that, became a recording artist in my late 30s.
Mhm.
It's not my full-time job. It's not something I make money off of, but it brings me tremendous joy. So the person who really likes sports and data, I mean, I think of like Moneyball immediately,
Yes.
maybe like Moneyball. So, when you
Great,
think
great
about that,
movie, by the way.
right? It's
Yeah.
it's it's well done.
Yeah.
So part of it could be, maybe there's books that I read that are on the topic of sports and data and sports history and maybe there's a certain sport that I'm drawn to. I
Mhm.
make it a point to, I don't know, go to the games, read books written by people that played on those teams. Like maybe there's just something that doesn't have to become your job by any means, but that enriches your life because it's
Mhm.
something that at one point made you feel alive. So I think the idea that sometimes our passion has to become our career is can be faulty because people feel like, well, I can't make my passion my career. I love sports, but I can't make that my career. But I also really
Mhm.
love data, and that's what I do full time. You can still find ways to bring those aspects of who you are into your life to enrich your life, and it doesn't have to become what you do for a living.
That's a great point because so I teach intro to data analytics course, right? And
Hmm.
these are people who are working professionals for the
Hmm.
most part who want to shift into data.
Hmm.
And so they ask me about, how do I get a job in data? Like I have my experience is not in data. So what I tell them is build a portfolio and build it with um, data. that that you're interested in, a hobby that you have. If you
Hmm.
like movies, find data from movies and build a dashboard and put it out there as your portfolio. You're going to be
Yeah,
more invested in it because it's your passion, right? So use
great
that
idea.
passion to then showcase your talents.
Yes, I think that's it. Well, that was a nice like kind of button to that, nice bow to that question that you asked, I feel like.
Yeah, yeah. So while on the topic of data, right? So this being the Data Nerd podcast,
Hmm.
um, let me ask you, are you a data nerd? And if so, tell me when you realized you were one.
Yeah, so the thing I'm the data nerd about is like the biometric numbers I get from my Whoop band. So I've had a Whoop band for almost 8 years, similar to an RO ring, like tracks all these biomarkers like heart rate variability and respiratory rate and sleep and body temperature and all these kind of things. I've had this for almost 8 years, and I got it after I burned out and got mono in my early 30s because I realized I'm not the apparently the best at monitoring myself, and so I needed an external
Mm.
device to help me do that. So I
Mm.
will nerd out over looking at the data that I have from this because I have 8 years of data on it, right? So it
Yeah.
knows a lot about me. And day to day, I can look at it and it'll give me a snapshot of kind of where my body is, kind of give me a sense of what my capacity is. Is this the day I'm going to like really push, or is this the day I need to kind of peel back? It helps me understand because I journal stuff every morning. I try to track these things in a journal. It helps me understand, hey, when you read before bed, this is how this supports your sleep. When you eat too close to bedtime, this is how this negatively affects your sleep. So I'm constantly having this awareness, this increased awareness of how the things that I'm doing are affecting my health, well-being, and my recovery. That's one. Another one is Peloton. I think I have 460 straight days of doing some type of activity in the Peloton
Wow.
app.
Yeah.
So I don't like breaking streaks. Same with this, the
That,
Whoop in. I have, I think, over 2,000 days of uninterrupted data.
it's kind of like a challenge to yourself, right?
It's like
That,
how do I optimize these
how do you,
things?
yeah, 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 yeah. But that
Yeah,
keeps you, I don't know if you've heard of the book Atomic Habits.
I love Atomic Habits.
Okay. And what did they talk about in there is how do you create these habits? Because a lot of times, a lot of people want change, but
Yeah.
it starts off with motivation, but the motivation dies eventually, and then that habit will fall off. And so what you have to try to do is try to attribute it to something you're currently doing,
Mhm.
and so that it becomes part of your routine. So add it to an existing routine. And I think what you're trying to do is also you're trying to give yourself motivation to keep it going by saying, I need to keep the streak up, which will help you continue to do that.
Yeah, well, there's a couple things he says that are relevant to what you just said. One of them is he says, if you skip one day, okay, that's fine. If you miss one day, if you skip a second day, that's the start of a new habit. So just sometimes just like don't miss 2 days in a row. So part of that is just telling yourself that is a helpful, I think kind of way
Yeah.
of thinking about it. That's one. And the other thing is that he says what most people think they lack motivation, what they really lack is clarity. So most people think they lack motivation. What they really lack is clarity. For me, I am so
Mm.
clear because I've burned out, because I've gone through these experiences where I have lost my health. I am so clear on how I want to feel. I want to feel energized. I want to feel alive. I
Mm.
want to feel strong. And I feel all of those things when I take care of my health. And so it's a matter of getting to the identity. He talks about focusing on, instead of the outcome, focusing on the identity, focus on becoming the kind of person who can get that kind of outcome. So you ask yourself the question, what kind of person do I want to be? And what would that kind of person do in this situation? So if I want to be the kind of person who takes care of my health, well,
Yeah.
what decision would that person make at this meal, with this block of free time, at 11 o'clock at night, ideally probably more like 10 o'clock at night if
Yeah.
I'm going to bed a little earlier. And he says every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become.
It's a very human-centered approach.
Very. I love
Uh,
it.
as humans, we make mistakes sometimes, not mistakes necessarily, but we're human, right? Like, and then what you said about missing a day, it's not the end of the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And things happen, life happens, right? So,
Mhm.
you're able to keep up with that streak, right? But if something happens tomorrow where you're not able to do it, does that mean you're going to stop?
No, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to be like, guess I'm starting a new streak. Like
Yes.
at a certain point, you make it, I'm starting a new streak. Okay. And it doesn't mean anything about who I am as a person. I'm still the kind of person who shows up consistently for my body. Like that, the identity didn't change. So that's why I think it's so important. Most people are not clear on who they are and who they want to be. And that's really what I help people do through my work is I help them get
Hmm.
clear on who they are, what they're capable of, and who they want to become.
So is that part of this voice method that you have?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. What is the voice method?
Yeah. So it's a framework that I created after working with, I mean, I've worked for 20 years with organizations, leaders, and teams. I was the director of well-being and employee engagement for 13 years
Hmm.
at a large benefits consulting company. And so I was helping all different kinds of organizations become best places to work, support the well-being of their people, build thriving cultures. And as part of that work, I started working with leaders. And I noticed these tendencies that people had to hold themselves back, to doubt and silence themselves. And so I started asking as part of my keynotes, this was probably 6 years ago, I started asking these questions. What is one way you are currently silencing, doubting, or holding yourself back that you'd like to overcome?
Hmm.
And at this point, I've heard from over 5,000 people in response to that question. And I was curious, what were the reasons why people are holding back? Because there's consistent themes that show up when I ask that question. And the number one reason that people hold back, silence, or doubt themselves is probably not surprisingly, it's fear.
Yeah.
So it's fear of failure, judgment, rejection, not being good enough, looking stupid, being wrong, being a burden. Like fear is the primary reason why we hold ourselves back. And we don't ever, for most of us, we don't check it. We don't
That's
necessarily question it.
that's what held me back, is fear.
Mm.
But I think that fear is self-inflicted,
Oftentimes it is, yes.
because worry when you're trying to do something, you're worried. The fear is self-inflicted because you're worried about what other people may think.
100%.
But at the end of the day, you're not the main player in other people's lives. They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves as well, right? So like that thing, that's what helps me. I'm like, I'm here and I'm talking to people. They're not worried about how I say my words or like if I said the right thing or not. They're probably thinking about how this is going to help them, not
Yes.
how I sound.
Well, it's interesting. I finished reading with a friend this fall a book called The Courage to be Disliked.
Okay.
Great book. Great book.
Yeah.
And sort of the premise of the book is the freedom to be happy includes the courage to be disliked. That if we are always putting our happiness in the hands of other people's approval, we are not living in freedom.
That's true because you can't make everyone happy.
You can't even make yourself happy like you don't even know what you want most of the time. And then to like guess what you think other people want or need from you, so it's a losing game. And I think a lot of people focus too heavily. A lot of the fear is the fear of rejection, which means I'm afraid of other people judging or not liking me, which is often at the core of fear of rejection.
So is this saying that it's okay to be disliked?
Like you don't even like everybody. Like
That's
you
true.
think about it, right? You're
That's
like,
true.
do I like everybody? I don't.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you think everyone should have to like you? And that if they don't, okay, then they're missing out on what you have to offer.
Yeah,
There's a
that,
lot of people in the world,
that's a fair point. Yeah. So
you
is it,
know?
so what it's saying is be comfortable with being disliked or not let it bother you. And once you do that, then you'll be able to reach your full potential.
It's like don't let that be the goal. Don't let people's approval. And I mean,
Yeah.
there's Bronnie Ware. It was a palliative care nurse who wrote a book called "The Top Five Regrets of the Dying." She spent time with people on their deathbeds, and what she saw consistently is the number one regret people had in their lives was, "I wish I'd
Mm.
had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me."
Yeah. That's very powerful.
Reinforces that like, if we're trying to live a life that everyone's expecting us to live, we're living for other people's approval. And if we're constantly living for other people's approval, we are very likely betraying ourselves.
And you're never gonna you're never gonna be happy. You're never gonna achieve that status. You're never gonna get to that point where everyone likes you.
No, you're not. It's a losing proposition. And so being willing to do that. So part of it, when we talk about the voice method has 5 parts. And the first part is the void. And the void is identifying this place of stuckness, this
Mm,
place of stagnation, this place of, it often shows up as discomfort or discontent or disconnection of some kind. And you can feel it when you're in the void. You might notice it as tension in your body, in your jaw, in your chest. You
mm,
might notice it as a sense of frustration, resentment, this irritability. When we're in the void, we sense that something is off, but oftentimes we stay in a place of denial and we're not willing to acknowledge it and to then be willing to do something with it. So the gift of the void is that it makes you so uncomfortable that you realize, I cannot stay here anymore. I can't, like for you, you got to the point where you discovered this passion that you had to
yeah.
combine art and data. And
Mm,
you realized, oh my gosh, this thing lights me up. This brings me joy. This makes me feel alive, if it's
mhm.
accurate to say
Yeah.
that that combination did that.
Mhm.
And you realize that the pain of staying how you were and silencing yourself wasn't worth it because of the joy and aliveness that you felt stepping into this new version of yourself that combined these things that made you feel alive. And you felt compelled, I've got to share this because the joy of what you could share was greater than the discomfort. It was worth the moving out of that place of discomfort of just trying to avoid fear and people's approval all the time.
That's definitely part of it. I think the other part was before that point, I didn't think I had anything worthwhile to share as well,
Mhm.
right? But maybe I did. Who knows? But I think that passion ignited me to push myself to say, "Oh, this is something worthwhile for me to share."
Yeah. So it's like the question I have people ask themselves in the void is, what is your fear costing you? Like, what is your fear
Well,
costing you?
okay. I mean, in my case, it might have been personal and career growth.
Yeah. How about a sense of fulfillment? Because you're
Sense
combining these
of,
things that
yeah.
you love.
But that is very true because now I think now I have because of that passion now I um have an enjoyment doing my job and not that I hated my job. I'm not saying that, but I
Well,
just have more fulfillment and it allows me to do my job better when
yeah.
you enjoy it.
It might sound like a novel concept, but it's very true. Like when you like what you're doing, you bring more of yourself, you put in more discretionary effort. You generally are can be more creative in how you approach it because you care.
Yeah.
And it does make a difference. And people leave money on the table. There's the fear can literally cost people. The fear of, gosh, if I ask for this promotion that I want, my boss is going to think I'm like, who do you think you are? And then my boss is going to say no. Or if I raise my hand to contribute to this, contribute in this meeting, or to serve on this board, or to speak at this conference on behalf of my organization, gosh, what if it doesn't go well? You know what? I'm not even going to try. And it
You're
costs
right.
us.
You're right. Um, there's a saying that Wayne Gretzky says, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was what I was doing before. I wasn't taking my shots. And so even if you hit 50% of the shots, that's still 50% more than you would have had before.
Exactly. And it's worth doing. It's taking worth. I mean, another piece of data, since we're talking about data, a research study that was done by Daniel Pink, a New York Times bestselling author, one of my favorite authors. They conducted a study called the World Regret Survey, and it includes, at this point, probably closer to 30, but over 26,000 people from over 100 countries. And they identified four core regrets people have in their lives. And
Mm.
one of the most painful regrets that any of us have are what they call boldness regrets. So if
What's that?
only, why didn't I? I wish I
Mm.
had. Ah, I should have gone for it. Like
Mm.
those if only regrets, the why didn't I regrets, the I should have regrets. And they keep us in a place of frustration because he found regrets of inaction are more common than regrets of action, that we regret the things we didn't do more than the things that we did do.
So you know what helps me now
Um,
overcome that is I ask myself, what's the worst that could happen if I try this?
mm,
If the worst that can happen is like just rejection, I go, okay, what's the big deal? Just give it a shot.
yeah. Like you can handle that. Like
Yeah,
you're not going to die. Because the ultimate
exactly.
fear is death, right? The ultimate fear that everything goes down to, like the seven layers, is I'm going to die. You're not going to die if someone rejects you.
Exactly. Well, now if the worst case scenario is I'm going to die, then I might not do it.
Right.
right? Like
Exactly.
skydiving, I'm not going to skydive because I think about it. What's the worst that could happen? Oh, I can die. So it's not worth the risk.
Worth the risk. Well,
Some
it's
people,
interesting.
yeah.
Well, you saying all this kind of brings me like this, the next part of this, the O part of the
Okay.
process, the opportunity, because you were asking the question, what's the worst case scenario? What happens? Could I survive that? Essentially,
Yeah.
is kind of what I heard you say there.
Mm.
When I think of the opportunity, it's like a flip of that. So the two questions that I like people to ask in the opportunity is if it were just right, what would it look like? So whatever area of your life where you're holding back. So you think about yourself, right? If it were just right, if the way that I'm showing up, if how I spent my days, how I spent my time, if my job, if this relationship were just right, what would it look like? And then you imagine the best case scenario. You put yourself in the mindset of the best case scenario. Oh gosh, if it were just right, I'd be combining my passion for art and data, and I would get to create these really cool images, like the thing behind you. I would get to share my passion with people for these two things that I love, and I'd be able to help them. I'd be able to make a positive impact or a difference in their work or their life by combining these two things that make me feel alive. That sounds like a pretty good outcome. And then you ask a second question is what becomes possible if I start showing up with courage and confidence and stop holding myself back? Like what could become possible in the best case scenario? So we're often very good at worst case scenarioing. It's not even a word, but we're we're often really good at coming up with the worst case scenario. But what
Yeah.
if we give ourselves an opportunity to say, hey, if it were just right, what could become possible in the best
So,
possible scenario?
so let me ask you this. Are
Yeah.
some people already living in the best case scenario and they don't even realize it?
Oh, what a beautiful question. Phew. Yes. So often because we're constantly some people I'm thinking of, I'm feeling convicted by your question.
Mm.
Because we continue to up the ante. And so we don't recognize, I've heard people say like sometimes you have to stop and realize you're already living the life that you once dreamed of.
Yeah. Because a lot of times people always think the happiness will happen in the future and it's a
Yeah.
future state and your goals are in the future. But if you look, sometimes you look at like, what am I doing right now?
Yeah.
And is this where I want to be? And this is what I want to do. Sometimes you don't like appreciate the present and what you have.
So well said. Somebody needs to hear that today, that because we're so future focused, and I am very future focused. I'm like,
Yeah.
what's next? What's more? What's next? What's more? What's next? What's more? Constantly in that state. Part of it is I'm wired to be strategic. I'm wired to achieve. And there are moments where I'm like, Rachel, look at this life that you are living. You're traveling around the country or hopping on here, speaking to
Yeah.
these organizations, changing people's lives, having people tell you stories about how something you said on stage catalyzed some significant thing inside of them. You're doing music, which is something your 9-year-old self only dreamed of ever doing. You're married to a man who deeply loves and cares for you. Um, like you have amazing friends. Like you have
Yeah.
your health. You know
A
what it's
lot
like
to
to
be
lose
grateful for, a lot to
so
be grateful
much.
for, right?
So much to be grateful
And
for.
everybody has things that they can be grateful for. Yes, obviously there's like, there are other things that maybe are not ideal, but like if you look at the balancing scale and look at
Yeah.
and try to see like what's good and what do I have grateful for and what's not, see what what tips the balance scale.
Well, I've heard people say, I don't know who said it, but what we focus on expands. And so if you focus on everything that's wrong with your life, guess what you're going to find? Even more that's wrong with
Yeah,
your life.
more,
And
yeah.
even you focus on what's good, you focus on what is good. I mean, there's so much research behind the power of gratitude and where we put our attention and how that affects how we feel and how it affects our health and how it affects our creativity. And if we recognize that if I focus on what is good and what is right, one, I get to have a better day. I mean, my dad often says, like, you're with yourself all day. Like, you could have a better day if you just chose to focus on what's good, not to ignore what isn't. All of us have hard things with our family, with our health, with our careers, with decisions we have to make,
Hmm.
with finances. All of us have stuff that we're dealing with. Nobody's like, I don't
Yeah.
say any of the things I just said and ignore the fact that there are things in my life that are difficult. But it's making a choice to focus more heavily on what is good and what is right than what is wrong and what is lacking.
So you know what I think helps accomplish that. And this is something I started this year. Okay,
Mm.
and I haven't been consistent with it. Okay, I have to get back to it. So I told my wife every day, um, think of something that you're grateful for, and
Mhm.
every day it's got to be something different. And
Mhm.
once you do that and you say it out loud to somebody, it makes you realize that, yeah, this is something to be grateful for. Otherwise, it's just something that's part of your life that you don't think about unless you call it out or say it even out loud to somebody else.
You take it for granted. There's so much we
Take it for
take for
granted.
granted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Some of that future looking state, right? People look in the future and,
Mhm.
they're strategic or they think about what to aim for. Those are not, that's not a bad thing. It's good
No.
to plan for the future. But I think a lot of that is ingrained in corporate culture because what happens every year in corporate culture, you have goals to achieve for the end of the year. You're always looking forward. You're always
Mhm.
trying to push the envelope or get better personally or drive more profit for the company. Or there's always goals that you're setting for the year, and so you're always forced to look to the future state, right? And in the corporate environment. I think that's also part of what gives us that mentality of maybe not looking at the present.
Mhm. Yeah, there's pressure. I think a lot of organizations miss out on the good things that are already happening within within the company because they can be so future focused that they can miss out on what's good right now. And it's really demotivating for people to not be acknowledged, affirmed, or appreciated for what is right and what is good right now. And sometimes we can be so focused on the future that we forget to ask ourselves the question, what are we already doing that's working? Like in your personal life and as an organization, as a leadership team, what are some things that we are doing right now? And ask the people that work there. What are one or two things that we as an organization are doing right now, or that's happening on your team right now, or happening in this process or system that you use with a client or customer? What is something that we are doing right now that is working, that is good? And keep track of those things and acknowledge, especially if there's things that come out as pervasive themes. This is something we're doing well that we want to continue to nurture. That's a way we can do that. And then we can ask ourselves the question, what's one thing that we could do differently to be even better at X, fill in the blank, whatever X is. But by focusing on, instead of 10 things we need to do, overwhelming for most people, focus on the goodness of what already is, the strengths. That's a very strengths based approach. And then ask the question, what's one thing we could do differently to be even better? If you could wave your magic wand and change one thing about X or Y within this organization, what would you do and how would you make it different? That's energizing for people because you're letting them appreciate the good of what is, but then you're also not making looking to the future too overwhelming. You're kind of containing it by asking for what are one or two things, and you're giving them some skin in the game and an opportunity to contribute.
Showing appreciation is such a powerful thing, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't, it's not even that hard. But when you hear somebody tell you how much they appreciate you, it, it means a lot and it really motivates you and makes you feel, I don't know, fulfilled, right? Like what if your manager comes to you, like says to you one day, it's like, listen, I really appreciate what you do and you're doing a great job, keep it up and I'm proud of your accomplishments.
Mm.
That that really helps. That really helps people. And people think it's just words and but showing appreciation through um by communicating it to them is holds a lot of weight, I feel.
Well, and the more specific the appreciation is, the better. So I used to speak a lot about this topic and gratitude at work. There
Mm,
was a study done by I think the Templeton Foundation that found that the workplace ranked dead last in terms of places where people show appreciation, i.e., we're more likely to thank a salesperson or a mail carrier than we are to thank our own colleagues. And it's one of the main reasons people leave their jobs is because they don't feel appreciated. They feel invisible. A lot of people at work feel invisible.
yeah.
And so interestingly, this segues really well into this illumination. So it's like the this voice method is the void, the opportunity is the O, and then the I is the illumination. And the
Mm,
illumination is highlighting the strengths and capabilities inside of ourselves through introspection, reflection, and seeking feedback and allowing other people to be mirrors for us. So other people to mirror back the goodness they see. So for instance, there's a practice out of the University of Michigan called the reflected best self. And
Mhm.
the way that this works is that you ask a handful of people in your life, can you tell me about a time when you've seen me at my best? What
Okay.
showed up? What strengths did you see? And then what you do is you ask 6 to 8 people, send it as an email, make it copy paste, make it really simple for yourself. Say, I'm doing some work on personal and professional growth and development. You're someone whose opinion and insight I trust. I feel like you know me well. Can you tell me about a time you've seen me at my best? And then what you start to do is you start to capture and compile. I mean, using AI these days, you could very easily take all of that, dump it in, and say, based on this, give me a short paragraph
Right.
about what my strengths are in the eyes of others. And you write a new narrative for yourself. And you literally write out, when I am at my best, I. And then you complete that based on what has been reflected back to you from people who know you well. And what starts to happen, that there's many examples of how we can elevate our what psychologists call self-concept clarity. So self-concept clarity is having a clear, accurate, grounded sense of who you are. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't know who they are. They don't know what they're good at, partially because a lot of people don't spend a lot of time in introspection. They tend to dismiss and kind of deflect when someone does give them praise or a compliment. And so it's like in one ear out the other, because many of us are so uncomfortable being seen, even though deep, deep down we really want to be.
I feel
Um,
like people do that because they feel like they want to be humble.
yeah, they do. And there's actually, so this is one of my favorite authors and psychology professors out of University of Pennsylvania, Adam Grant. He talks about something called confident humility. The goal is that the best leaders have both of those. So confidence is self-assurance in what you do well, knowing and owning your strengths. It is basically having a healthy sense of self-concept clarity. Humility is the willingness to ask questions, to seek feedback, to admit when you're wrong or when you've made a mistake.
Mm.
And so the goal is not that you're a doormat who just is so humble that you're invisible, basically. And then on the flip side of that, you don't want to be so confident that you're arrogant, because confidence that goes too far is arrogance. Humility that goes too far is often invisibility and reflection of a deep lack of self-worth. So the goal is to combine these things. So you have confident humility of both. And I think
Yeah.
that really helps people to kind of reconcile. It's okay to be acknowledged for what you do well. It's not you being arrogant, it's you having a healthy sense of self.
Yeah. And to your point, it's also okay to admit when you're wrong. And
Yes.
that's a very powerful thing to admit, right? I mean, again, we're all human. We make mistakes. It
And you
happens.
learn to grow. Like I've gotten harsh feedback. I've sat on a Zoom call on the other side of a almost 30-year veteran who was also former military, who's worked in the speaking industry. And I have sat there for 2 hours while he has basically torn apart a keynote that I've done. And my branding or not necessarily my branding, my bio, my session descriptions. I mean, this was months ago this happened. And I could have become defensive in the face of that.
Mhm.
And a part of me wanted to like run away and hide, honestly. It was really painful and difficult because there was no lack of brutality in his honesty. And he had asked me ahead of time, he said, how honest do you want me to be? A
Mhm.
proud version of me would have said, don't be too honest. Like, I don't know if I can handle it.
Yeah.
But the humility in me was like, I want to get better. And if this person who has way more experience than I do in this industry can help me get better, I'm going to be open to what he says. I'm not going to take what he says as gospel. I'm not going to assume that everything he tells me is something as advice that I need to follow. I'm going to run it through my own internal filter because I have a clear sense of who I am. So he might say something and I can shelve that. I could say, thank you for your opinion. Everyone has one.
Yeah.
I'm going to do nothing with that. But the other things he said prompted me to make some changes in my keynotes that led to a better outcome than I would have had if I didn't have the humility to hear him out.
That's the only way to grow is by learning is knowing what you may not be doing right and how to make that better.
Yeah.
Not just saying, "Oh, no, I'm not good," and letting you letting that put yourself down and not continue in your efforts.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, well, again, back to what you said about atomic habits.
Yeah.
My goal is to be the kind of person one who is an exceptional speaker, who continues to have impact, who's very growth oriented. I'm the kind of person who loves to learn. I'm the kind of person who's willing to be challenged. I'm the kind of person who wants to continually make my work better. And because of that, because once you're clear on who you are, now you can take feedback like that might be difficult for somebody to hear, even if it's difficult for you to hear, and say, you know what? Because I'm clear on who I am and where I want to go, I can hear this because it's going to help me become more the kind of person I want to be.
Is it being clear of on who you are, or is it having confidence in who you are? Because then when you hear that feedback, that negative feedback,
Mm-hmm.
you're able to kind of deflect it and say, okay, you know what? You, they have a point, but like I'm not gonna let this bother me because I'm confident in my skills and who I am.
Well, it's interesting. It's like chicken or the egg kind of thing with that, because I think a lot of what helps us build confidence is by having having enough evidence that we are good at a thing. So, for instance, I've been speaking long enough now and have gotten feedback from enough people that I am very good at this. Like, that's not even just, there might be people that watch what I do and they don't like some aspect of it, fine. But I have enough like objective evidence from thousands of people and hundreds of clients that have said I'm really good at this. I also know how I feel when I'm on stage. I hear the stories that people share afterwards. I really work at my craft. I'm really committed to becoming excellent at this. And so I've had enough reflected back to me from people telling me what it is about what I do that I'm particularly good at. And I take that in and I notice that. They say you're really good at storytelling, you're really good at being vulnerable and relatable and refreshing and emotionally connecting to people. You're good at getting people to connect with each other. You know, when I hear those kind of things, I take that in. Those are data points. I take that in, I notice that. And I notice how I feel when I'm at my best. And so part of it is because I have so many reps at this point, thousands of reps of doing this, I start to feel more confident inside of myself, because confidence is the byproduct of action. So you get more confident the more you do the thing. So the action comes before the evidence.
So all of these things that you mentioned
Yeah.
are also part. So I I teach data storytelling as well.
Oh,
These are
love.
all aspects of data storytelling.
Yeah.
Putting yourself in other people's shoes, telling that story, making it emotional, having them connect to it, right? And these are not all done because it's more entertaining. It's done so that people remember what
Yes.
you say, right? You're not talking to them, you're communicating with them, right?
Yes.
Um, and I'll tell you what you do well and why I feel that you make an impact on people when you're talking with them or you're talking to them is you give off this sense or this vibe that you're listening to me when I'm talking to you. I can tell that I'm being that you're listening and you're
Mm.
taking that in and you're not just telling me something that you want me to hear, but you're also taking in what I want to say and I feel that
Mm.
and it then allows me to then take what you say back to me and receive it and it makes it much more impactful to me.
Oh, well, thanks. That means a lot.
Yeah.
I try to do that. I want people to feel seen and heard.
Yeah. And that helps, right? That helps with the objective. Even if it's not a one-to-one communication.
Yeah.
When you're on a stage, I was listening to your talk on the voice method. It sounded like you were talking to everybody in the crowd one on one.
Oh,
Not that you
thanks.
were talking to a group of, I don't know how many people were there, but you weren't talking to a large group. You were
Yeah.
talking, it felt like you were talking one on one with people.
Oh, that's such a compliment. That's what I aspire, because so I'm glad you pointed that out, because even connected to the data storytelling, which I'm so curious about, because
Hmm.
so many people do a very poor job of telling stories from data. They just present the data
Yes,
without any type of structure of story. And then they're like, how come nobody wanted to work with me?
exactly. Yeah.
You didn't appeal to their heart. You can't just appeal to their head. You need to appeal to both,
You have to peel the both. Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
so, but thank you for saying that. That really means a lot. And it is something that I am intentional about, because I know, I didn't fit in growing up as a kid. I struggled with friendships. I was very shy and quiet too. I had a book called The Introvert's Advantage. So you're sharing you were introvert
Are you an
earlier.
introvert?
No, I'm an extrovert.
Okay.
but I thought I was an introvert. And then it wasn't until probably 8 years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine and I was like, I get so energized by like being with people and being around people and like I get filled up when I'm in. People ask me at the end of a keynote or the end of an event when I've done a keynote, I've been at the lunch, I've gone to the reception, I've done line dancing. They're like, "You must be so exhausted." And then I'm like, "What's next?" Like I just I have so much fun with it. And so one of my friends said, she said, I said, I'm struggling with this my whole life. I've been like an ISTJ, you know, Myers-Briggs. My whole life I've been an introvert. This is my identity. I'm really struggling. This is an identity crisis. And she said, my friend Tori, she said, maybe you just never felt safe enough to be yourself.
Mm.
Which is not to say every introvert's a closet extrovert, but it's to say for me, like there was this aliveness in me that I was so terrified of that I would not let people see, that I was so afraid of judgment. I was so afraid of rejection that I muted and shrunk myself for a lot of my life. And now I feel like the most authentic version of who I am, that this is who I am meant to be. This is how I was meant to be. And it took me going through a lot of hard stuff to get here.
There's a hybrid personality now that I'm hearing about. I think it's called introvert.
Introvert, my
Introvert?
friend.
Yeah. It's
My
a
friend just
combination of both introvert and extrovert, right?
it's more like a light switch. So my understand my literally my best friend just sent me something about this the other day and he's like,
Hmm.
I feel seen. And it's sort of like because it's an ambivert is you kind of flex between the two. I think I'm more of an ambivert. My understanding of an introvert, which is a weird
Yeah.
word, that's a
Yeah.
mouthful to say,
Yeah.
is it more like a light switch. Like they're very much affected by energy. So if
Mm.
they're with people that are giving them energy, like they can kind of dial it up and show up more fully. If they sense that they're not jiving with the energy in the room, they will like shut down and check out and get out. So it's from my understanding is that a lot of it, it's not like scientifically proven yet. It's kind of a newer thing that's been introduced into the world.
Yeah.
But my understanding of it is that it's more like a light switch.
Mm.
Sometimes they can appear super introverted and sometimes they can appear very extroverted, but it's often based on how they're playing off of and experiencing the energy of the other people in that space.
Yeah. You know, the other thing that I think people feel sometimes is they feel that there's a stigma with
Mm.
being an introvert, that it's a
Yeah.
negative thing.
Yeah.
It's not.
Mm-mm.
I talk about this now, and I say that being an introvert, it can play to your advantage. What are introverts good at? Listening,
Mhm.
right? They hear people. They think before they talk for the most part. And those are all good things to have good characteristics. So
Mhm.
I don't think you should feel that, oh, I'm an introvert and that's a bad thing and I need to change. No, use it to your advantage.
I completely it's even labeling any of these things good or bad, labeling ourselves as anything is generally like not the most helpful.
Yeah.
I heard Susan Cain, who wrote the book Quiet, I heard her speak at a conference last year. So that book, for anybody who is an introvert, by the way, if you want to feel validated and affirmed for the superpowers you have, read the book Quiet by Susan Cain. Um, because we need all of this together. And there's so many misconceptions too that introversion and shyness are the same. They're not. Like there can be an introvert who's like not shy. It's more of how you're recovering and where you're getting your fuel, where you're getting what you're getting fueled by.
Yeah.
And there so in any case, I mean there could be an extrovert who's shy, which might sound strange, but it's these are two different things, I feel like. And sometimes um I mean that book I find like is probably one of the most helpful things for anyone to read that's curious about how introversion is
A
an absolute superpower.
a lot of good books you've mentioned here on the podcast.
Yeah, we can put them in the notes. I know
You
I'm a
put in
reader. I read
notes.
a lot of books.
No, it's great. It's great.
Data, right? You know, I read a lot of, and people who combine data and storytelling super, super well. Two of my favorite authors that do that are Adam Grant and Daniel Pink. They
Yeah.
do such a phenomenal job of combining storytelling and data, like really excellent.
Yeah. Um, and you were talking about this earlier, right? Some people think like I'm a data person and I'm just going to present the data and people will understand it. No, because everyone's level of data literacy is different. Some people will hear numbers or see numbers and interpret it one way, and another person will look at it and be like, I have no idea what this means. You have to package it for them and deliver that message. Can't just assume people will know that what that means. And that's also a part of storytelling.
It is. And people remember stories. I mean, people remember data too. Like there's certain data points that I remember being at conferences and hearing certain things, and you can remember certain numbers, but
But what enabled you to remember that? Maybe
yeah, the
is
emotional
it
experience I had.
the emotional experience, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
It was connected to something meaningful to me. So it's like that's
exactly.
what we miss.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right,
Yeah.
so you talked about in voice VOI, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So then what's the C?
Yeah. So the C is one other thing I'll mention in the I for the illumination is like a very practical thing people can do is that something I call an impact inventory. And so what I mean by that is making a list consistently, just it could be in a Word document, like nothing complicated, of the things of the contributions that you make and the accomplishments that you have at work and keeping track of those. So it could be something that you've done that's quantitative, qualitative, to make money, to save money, to solve a problem, to improve a process. And a lot of people don't track their own successes. And then when it comes time at the end of the year for a performance appraisal, they forget what they did in February. They
You
don't
know
remember.
what?
You don't remember.
That's so true. So I mentor people at work as well, and I this is something I tell them. I'm like, keep a tracker of everything you've done and put it in that tracker, because at the end of the year, you're not going to remember it.
You're
A-
not.
And 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 now it's even easier. You know why? With AI,
Yeah.
like you can like you can just ask like we use Copilot at work, right? And it's able to read your emails, read your messages on Teams and whatnot, and gather all that information for you. So it becomes a lot easier. But if you make it even easier and you have a centralized document where you take the notes, even if it's AI generated notes and put
Sure.
it in a place, it's not a lot of work. It's very easy to do, especially now.
Well, and most people don't do it. And so then when it comes time to have a conversation, they feel like, you know what? Title change, raise, new opportunity, they have nothing to stand on. So the impact inventory gives you proof. It gives you the evidence. And it also helps build your confidence because you're looking at it and you're like, oh my gosh, look at all these things I've done. Maybe I do know what I'm doing. So that
Yeah.
also helps you build a sense of confidence when you can see a list of your own track record. So I wanted to mention that before we get out of the elimination part is
Yeah.
giving people that. Um, and then so the once we have a greater sense of clarity about who we are, and I found even taking different assessments can help with that, give us language to talk about what we do well or how the way that we're wired can contribute in a higher level at work.
Mm.
The C is the catalyst. So the catalyst is the thing that shifts us from hesitation to action. So you were talking about this at the beginning of the conversation when I was like, what was the catalyst that got you
Yeah.
to decide that you were going to start putting yourself out there more and not basically unmuting, like literally unmuting
Yeah.
yourself?
Yeah.
And you shared that. So a couple things that I like to share with people when I talk about this idea of the catalyst is the catalyst often shows up as an invitation or an opportunity of some kind that our initial response is, I'm not ready, I'm not qualified, I'm not capable. Could be someone says to you, hey, I think you're ready for the next level in your career. I think you're ready for this promotion. And our immediate response is, me? Me, I don't, oh no, let me tell you all the reasons why I'm not the right person for that. We can all think of people who have done this. We can all think of times we've done this ourselves, maybe, and we
Mm.
disqualify ourselves. Or someone says, hey, this happened to me at a conference. A woman who ran her company's wellness program was asked to speak on behalf of what they've done with this one vendor, the largest wellness vendor in the world, was asked to speak on behalf of her company at this conference. She said no. And she said, identity, because I'm not a public speaker. I said, no, because I'm not a public speaker. And so, again, that was an invitation. Maybe it's an invitation to share your thought leadership, to contribute to an industry publication, to speak at a conference, to be on a panel, to be on a webinar, to whatever it is. There's an invitation that is given to you, or an opportunity that you see that you realize maybe I should apply for that. Maybe I should submit. Maybe I should give it a shot. But most of us don't, like you said at the beginning, we don't take our shot.
We
We don't
don't.
go for it.
Um, that happened to me when I talked about the software that I use, Tableau.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I started using it, I had no experience using it. I didn't even know what it was at that time. But I worked for a company that had a license, and they're like, "Can you use this and you know leverage it to help us. And I could have said no, like I don't know what this is,
Yeah.
but I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I learned it, and I discovered something that was is now a passion of mine, right? And if I said no, I would never have done that. And I think we don't give ourselves enough credit sometimes on what we're capable of doing. I think the opportunities will present themselves in ways that we may not see it. And a lot of times there's a there's a discomfort in trying to do these things because we don't know how to do it, but we can figure it out.
Yes.
We're professionals. We know how to do it. We can learn it. And allowing yourself to do that will sometimes enable you to go down a path that you may not have seen and discover some opportunities.
Oh, 100%. And that's a great example because that happens at work, right? People say, "Can you learn this new system? Can you learn this new program?" Or a client, if you're in a consultative role, a client says they come to you, they want your opinion on something. Like, what should we do? And sometimes our immediate thought is like, "Oh, I've never been in this situation before. I want to make sure I give the right answer. I don't want to mess it up." And so again, we go to this place of deficit as our for many people, our go-to. So what I like to encourage people, there's two phrases. I think sometimes having just like a one-liner
Hmm.
can be helpful. So these two phrases are the probably two phrases that get quoted back to me more than anything else I say on stage. One is you are not an imposter, you are in process. So a lot of times we think I'm an imposter. I don't know how to do
Hmm.
that. I've never done that before. No, no, you're in process. You're figuring it out as you go. So is everybody else. Like
That's a great way
I've
to see it. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're in process. You're figuring you're learning.
And also, it's not a bad thing to say you don't know. Not everybody knows the answers. When I started teaching, that was my blocker. I was like,
Oh,
what if I don't know the answers? What if the students ask me questions and I don't know?
yeah.
It's okay to say I don't know, but I'll figure it out and we'll get back to you. That's it's okay.
It's better than making it up and faking it and
Y-
giving the wrong response because your ego couldn't say you don't know.
Like what AI does, right? With hallucinations.
It's true though. I mean, I'm looking right here. I have this board of all these like magnets and cards and quotes people have sent me over the years. That's in my office, and one of them is by this guy named Mike Dooley, and it says, "The one thing all famous authors, world-class athletes, business tycoons, singers." Actors and celebrated achievers in any field have in common is that they all began their journeys when they were none of these things.
Hmm.
They all went through a process to become who they ultimately became. So part of it, you're not an imposter, you're in process. And then the second line, and this is like quoted back to me so much, I put it on the back of my business card, is an invitation is an indication of a qualification.
They wouldn't be asking you if you weren't qualified, right?
They think you're qualified. You may think you're not qualified. But if somebody's asking you to do something, if they're like, here's an invitation for an opportunity, I think you're ready for it. It might just be one other person that thinks you're qualified. That is sufficient. And in that moment, what I encourage people to do is borrow other people's belief in you. So borrow their belief, say yes. Maybe you can't figure it out. Maybe you do fall flat on your face, but at least you tried. But chances are, because people are industrious and because people like to figure things out, chances are you're at least going to learn a bit more than you would have had you said no. And maybe that's going to take you in a different direction that you would have never gone on if you hadn't at least started the process. So
It's okay
accept the
to,
invitation.
yeah, and it's okay to learn how to do it before you do it, right? Um, when I teach, to be honest, like I sometimes have had to learn the material I had to teach before I teach it.
Yeah.
And there's not even that much of a time gap between learning it and then teaching it. But learning to teach is part of the process too. Like I'm actually, as a teacher, I probably learn as much as students, not because of what I'm saying, but like the engagement and feedback I get from the students and leveraging their experiences as well, because everyone has experiences I can learn from.
Yeah. And that's that confident humility. You're like, I know what I know. I trust that I can figure things out. There's certain things I'm good at, and there's other things that I'm learning along with them. I mean, that's the most beautiful combination of confident humility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, back to that.
Great. All right. So that's the C, right?
The catalyst.
The
Yeah.
catalyst.
Yeah.
We want to move to the
Sure.
last letter,
The
E.
last. Yeah, the E is the expression. This is the brave or bold step that you take to unmute yourself. So this is where we can circle back to the data I mentioned before about boldness regrets. So if we get to this point, we've moved through the pain, the discomfort, we've acknowledged, you know what? The pain of staying the same is greater than the risk to change. So I got to make a move. And we imagine, like, if it were just right, what would it look like? What becomes possible? What do I have inside of myself, the strengths and capabilities that I can leverage and bring into this? What invitation, could I accept that I previously rejected? And now we get to the point where, because we've built up all of that, now we're ready to make a move. And so what I often ask people to think about is, imagine it's a year from now. So we're talking about being future focused before.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very possibility oriented question. Imagine it's a year from now and you're celebrating one way that you have unmuted yourself, a way that you have stepped up, shown up, said yes, spoken up, accepted an invitation, put yourself out there, fill in the blank. What have you done? Like, what's the thing you're celebrating that you've done? And then secondarily, imagine how, back to combining the thinking and feeling, because that's more of a thinking question. What have you done? How do you feel? I started to shift it. I used to only ask people at the end of my keynote in a Mentimeter. So I have all this data collected.
Mm.
I ask them, what's the way you want to unmute yourself? And they give a wide range of responses, from health to asking for a promotion to applying to speak at a conference to writing a book they've always wanted to write to whatever. Fill in the blank. There's a lot of things. But then I started to shift it, because what I realized is that when you're speaking, and this is probably valuable for anyone who's doing presentations too, you want to leave people in their heart, not in their head. So what I did is I asked that same question, but what I asked them to respond to, a prompt on the screen, was, imagine how you feel. You've done that thing that you've wanted to do. You've unmuted yourself in that one way. How do you feel? And I didn't know what to expect, because I'd never asked the question before. But something in me trusted that I was going to end up with a better outcome if I asked that question than if I just asked tell me what you've done. And people started sharing words that people do not use in common vernacular and conversation. They started using words like exhilarated, invigorated, unburdened, liberated, overjoyed, weightless. I'm looking at these words, I'm like, no one says these things. But this is, to me, what the unmuted life feels like. Like, this is what it feels like to come alive. And if you focus on, again, the kind of person you want to be and how you want to feel, it becomes a lot more motivating. That gives you some of that clarity to say, you know what? I so desperately want to feel that way that I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get to make that outcome a reality, to make that vision for myself a reality.
Yeah. So this is future focused, right?
That's
Where do
very
you
important.
want to be?
Mhm.
No, this is great. This is very powerful.
Thanks.
And the reason I wanted to talk to you about this, right? And like, because I have seen this in my industry, or my,
Mm.
as analysts or data people, we don't focus on a lot of these things because
Mm.
we're just so in the trenches with the numbers, the data, making, and that's fine. That's obviously an aspect of our role. It's
Right.
important.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that that's only half of what we need to do. The other half is like, how do we how do we present that? And this voice method that you talked about are all things that we can learn from and take to help us amplify our voice and become not just better at our careers and our jobs, but overall as a person, and even in our personal lives. And
Yeah, it's the
that's the
deepest
beauty of this, I think.
fulfillment. I mean, really, I think if
Fulfillment,
people
yeah.
do these things, you have a greater sense of fulfillment. And the reason why is because you're living in a greater state of alignment. You're living in a greater state of alignment because you've gotten clear on who you are, on who you want to become, and on what you need to do to become that kind of person. And when you have clarity on those three things and you start living your life to honor that vision for yourself, you live in alignment. You're not two different people constantly. I mean, it's painful. There were moments where I was in my corporate job where I felt like I was expected to be X, but I really wanted to be Y. And trying to be this when I was like really this was exhausting. And it's part of what led me to burn out.
What if you don't know who you want to be? What if like what do you do? Like how do you figure that out?
Well, you could start by asking who you don't want to be. I mean, some people
Mm.
could say like the kind of person I don't want to be, and then kind of like reverse engineer it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think most people are clear on like, oh, I don't want to be lazy. Okay, well, what would be the opposite of lazy? I want to be productive. Okay. Or I don't want to feel um the kind of person I don't want to be is I don't want to be somebody who's like snarky and snarky and rude. Okay, well, what's the opposite of being snarky and rude? Um, being kind. Okay. Well, what would a kind person do in this situation? So if you're not really clear on who you want to be, maybe you can ask yourself, who do I not want to be? And get the opposite of that, positive opposite of who you don't want to be.
Yeah. Could you also find role models and try to see
Yes.
what their qualities are?
That's a great suggestion of looking at who is somebody that you admire and what are the qualities that they exude? How do they show up in the world? How do they interact? How do they talk to people? What are the themes or the trends that you notice? Have they written books? Have they been on podcasts? Immerse yourself in their world. If it's somebody you deeply admire, listen to their podcasts or the episodes they've been
Mhm.
on. Read the
Mhm.
books they've written. Read the articles and blog posts and Substacks. Read that. Follow them on LinkedIn. Follow them on Instagram. Watch their YouTube videos. Like if there's somebody you really deeply admire, immerse yourself in their world. And we often say that you become like the five people that you spend the most time with, and you can spend time with someone you've never actually met before by immersing yourself in what they've put into the world through books, podcasts, videos, that kind of stuff. So it's a great idea. I love that suggestion.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what it did. That's how I got you on here, right? I'm like, what your content resonated with me. I'm like, let me reach out and let me ask you if you could come on the podcast. I
Yeah.
took my shot, and here you are, right? So you
I'm
never
so
know.
glad you yeah, here we are.
No,
Accepted the invitation.
exactly, and you'd be surprised how much people are willing to help. Like,
Yeah.
it's people are like give people benefit of the doubt. Don't live in fear.
Yes. Well, also, and I'll say the way you approached it
Hmm.
made me want to, right? Like if someone sends a genuine message of interest
Yes.
and is specific in their requests, I'm pretty much always with something like this, with getting being able to have a meaningful conversation with someone. I mean, most of the time I'm going to say yes. If my schedule allows it, I'm going to say yes because somebody took a shot. Somebody genuinely expressed interest in what I do. And what I think, the one question I haven't mentioned today that I think kind of ties this conversation up really um, beautifully as it regards to coming out of this voice method piece is asking yourself the question, okay, based on what I'm good at, based on the vision I have for my life, based on who I already am and who I want to become, how can I be a contribution today? So how can I be a contribution in the
Mm.
world, in this meeting, through this email I send, and the conversation I have with this person I either do or don't really know that well? How can I be a contribution? If we show up with that intention, we're going to have more impact. We're going to have more influence. We're going to feel more fulfilled. Because back to that book, The Courage to be Disliked, one of the most fulfilling things that contributes to the thing that contributes to our happiness is feeling that we are of use to someone. In other words, being a contribution. That makes us feel alive.
You need to have some level of confidence in order to do that as well, right?
You do, which is why we build that up. We build that up in the illumination. We get clear on who we are, what we do well. We let people reflect it back to us. We take it in.
It's so true because a lot of times, like when I do these podcasts, it's oftentimes a one-way communication. People are listening, but I don't necessarily get the feedback directly back, right,
Mm-hmm.
on what they thought of it. Sometimes I'll get messages from people on LinkedIn and say, I've listened to your podcast and it means a lot to them and they appreciate it. And that helps me. It gives me fuel to
Yeah.
continue to do it. It's great to hear that, right? And um, I I think everyone listening here, if they were to think about people in their lives that they're appreciative of, or say things to people that they may not typically say, or maybe they think about it but they don't say it, just say it, and it'll make you feel better and make them feel better. At the end of the day, like what do you have to lose? I want to going back to, what do you have to lose? You only have things to gain in that situation.
Yeah. And you're being a contribution when you're affirming the goodness you see in another person, when you're serving as a mirror for them to reflect back a strength or a capability
Yeah.
that you see in them. What a gift. What a beautiful way to be a contribution, because so many people walk around feeling like they are less than they actually are. And you could be the reason why somebody feels a little bit better about themselves.
Yeah. Well, Rachel, thank you for this gift. It was really a pleasure to have you on
Thank
the
you.
podcast. How can people connect with you?
Yeah. So easiest way, or all my links to everything are racheldruckenmiller.com. And I like to, it's like a CK, not an NK. racheldruckenmiller.com. We connected on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is my
Yeah,
playground on social media by far and away. Instagram, I'm at Unmuted Life. And then you can find all my music on Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, iTunes, YouTube, wherever you listen.
great.
Yeah,
I'll add that all in the show notes here so people can connect with you.
fantastic.
But thank you so much, Rachel. It's been great.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave a rating or review. It really helps more data nerds discover the show. You can find all episodes, plus exclusive merch like the Data Nerd hat, and more at thedatanerdpodcast.com. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and embrace your inner data nerd.